Okay, so let me just say good morning and welcome to you, Maciej.
Maciej, yeah. Good
Maciek,
morning.
and also welcoming everyone who is going to listen maybe to this recording afterwards. So this episode is parts of the Hempy Talks series, and the Hempy Talks series I started with the intention of like raising more awareness of hemp businesses globally, so I can learn more about it, and also people who are interested in that can learn with me. And so far, this is the fourth episode focusing on hemp. And the Hempy Talks had two previous seasons when it was other sustainable businesses. And from season 3, it's hemp only. And I'm very happy for that. It gives me very good like insights into different businesses from different parts of the world. And surely the previous guests, Bernardo and Hannah and others, because it's a small world. And I'm really enjoying the conversations. And I'm very happy for you to be here. So if we can...
The world is small, but
Yes.
definitely growing. And I don't know if you're familiar with Eric Herlock from Lancaster Farming. He
Yes.
also started a podcast with an idea of having, if I remember correctly, 6 or a dozen episodes. He's now at episode 200 something. And there is, even though the world of cannabis processing, hemp processing is small, there is actually quite a lot of interesting people. So I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, I'm very happy for that. And later on, I will also ask you for your recommendations, who you want me to invite as my next guests. And I make sure that I reach out to them and invite them afterwards. So do you want to get started by just sharing how did you get in touch with industrial hemp?
As with probably quite many people in the industry, I actually started in the non-industrial cannabis part, being marijuana. In like more than 20 years ago, when I was still a teenager and actually not using marijuana, it was delegalized in Poland. Like the possession of even the smallest quantity of marijuana became a felony. You can go to prison for 3 years. And I was sort of involved in a movement to decriminalize it, to legalize marijuana. And then it went, just to cover 20 years in 2 minutes, it went from writing about it, to being engaged politically, to actually telling that it, apart from all the other issues, it's actually good business to be doing cannabis, to be doing hemp. And just to prove my point, I established a hemp company 10 years ago. I never wanted to be a business person. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never thought of myself in this way. But 10, 11 years ago, I decided I will build a hemp company just to prove a point. And and I actually stayed. I loved it. I loved farming because we are right now is my second company. The previous one was focused on cannabinoids and it was sold to Canada in 2018. And then it allowed me to open Kombinat Konopny, which is focused on using the full plant, being the herbal part, being dietary supplements, cannabinoids, and everything that serves to calm us down, because basically that's what hemp flower is doing. It's relieving stress, helping us sleep. I'm not one of those guys that say it's going to cure cancer and heal the world. It's just a very down-to-earth approach of having a natural herbal sleep aid and stress relief. And on the other hand, we're processing for fiber. So the company is focused on vertically integrated value chain, which means that we are actually growing it, we harvest it, we decorticate it, so remove the fiber from the stem, then cottonize it, which is a process of softening the fibers to make it a little bit like cotton, then blend it with cotton and spin it into yarn. And that's, yeah, camera is going crazy. That's the yarn that we're actually making from the hemp plants that we grow like a mile from here. And from this point, we can cooperate with local Polish partners in weaving and knitting so that we can make beautiful things like this one, which is made of Polish hemp mixed with European cotton, period. That's the shortest answer I can give to that
But that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And this is a very unique story as well. I would actually be interested in that part when you said that you were like working on decriminalizing it, because many of the hemp business owners I met, not only in the podcast, but outside it, it's really an issue, how to get to the point where the country starts realizing the potential instead of always, comparing it and focusing on the negative or the cannabis part of it. So can you share a little bit more about that? What kind of activities were they? How did you, what kind of achievements did you have? And when you said you proved your point, how did that work out for you?
Well, when it comes to achievements on the drug law reform side, I cannot say we've had any, because the legal situation is basically the same as it was 20 years ago. So still in the middle of the European Union, if you possess half a gram of marijuana herb, you can actually go to prison for 3 years. And we've got tens of thousands of people being prosecuted every year for such crimes, which usually when you speak about crime, you have a victim of that crime. In that case, you have a crime without a victim. So it is being used by police as a so-called statistical paragraph, because they just use it to get the statistics of finding the crimes better. Anyways, what we did manage to change is the social attitude, which is even more difficult to change than the law itself, because with the law, you just need a politician that will just sign it. With changing the mentality of 40 million people living in Poland, it actually takes time. So 20 years ago, when I was, for instance, running a cannabis newspaper, it was 2006, we had a spliff, a magazine writing about cannabis, all things hemp. And we wanted to put it for free in some shops. People didn't want to touch it. They were afraid. They were thinking cannabis and heroin like the same thing, and then it's gonna end up living in a train station. That's one thing that we succeeded in changing. That people now consider it a drug, but like on par with alcohol, which is like, okay, not something you want to be giving to your children and smoke every day, but it's not a threat to public health in any way. What did happen when it comes to legal situation is several years ago, medical marijuana was legalized. It is a kind of medical setup that we used to see in California, which means basically everyone is sick. Legally speaking, everyone can get the prescription. You don't have to be like really, really sick. Which is a sick situation, because regular recreational users are allowed to buy a prescription online. And for this reason, real patients, people that actually use it for genuine medical reasons, are being put again in the same category and considered like people that smoke for fun, etc. So legally, we did not manage to change much, although like the social change is a prerequisite for political change. You've asked for the actual activities that we've been doing. The newspaper was one thing. It was sharing knowledge to people that are already convinced, but they need arguments, they need stories, they need all the, like even the hemp part, leaving aside the recreational use, all the issues with paper, with textiles, with construction. 20 years ago, I was writing about it, but I didn't believe it myself. I thought it's like, oh yeah, let's just make those funny joints, and by the way, you can also build a house out of it. It's actually the other way around, and I realized it while working with it, that the industrial part is actually real opportunity to change some ways of things that are being done in a not environmentally friendly way, as with textiles. You can get cotton, which is usually grown like a natural fiber, perfect fiber, but usually grown in such an intensive way that it's actually harming the environment. On the other spectrum, we've got polyester and all the synthetics, which is a nightmare, like the worst thing that could happen to the textile industry. And all of those things can be done with hemp. you can step by step substitute some of those synthetics, some of that cotton with locally grown hemp. And then growing from this journalistic part of so basically what I was doing somewhat similar to what you're starting right now, basically spreading the knowledge, letting people know that like knowledge is power. If you empower people with the knowledge about this plant, and the truth is that it's actually a harmless plant, then the society will change. And growing from that, since it is the politicians that are changing the law, I decided to run for the parliament. Fortunately, unsuccessfully, because I couldn't imagine myself spending my life in the Polish parliament. And 2011, I was running for the MP in Poland, and 2014, I was running for the European Parliament. And although we also didn't succeed because it was me and some of my colleagues doing that, the more important thing than actually becoming an MP and having theoretically a voice in it is the platform that it gives. Because if you're running for public office, it gives you media attention and you can speak about all the issues at hand. And with a very interesting program, which had one point: legalize marijuana, tax it, and use all the tax revenue for whatever public business you want. So all the politicians are saying, I'm going to give you money for schools, I'm going to give you money for roads. I was the opposite. I was saying, I'm going to take your money. I'm going to actually tax you. And people wanted that because the cannabis industry alone in our country can bring in revenue ranging in 2 billion euros. It's compared to the amount of money that the public is spending, the country is spending, is maybe not huge, but still it would allow people to open up kindergartens, to build some bridges, to build some roads. It's much better than actually leaving all that money with organized crime, which is happening at the moment. And that was the point, 2014, the campaign for European Parliament, when I was speaking, it's tax money, it's job creation. And a lot of journalists were telling me, well, it's not the case, man. If it would be true, someone would be doing it. So my thinking went to the direction that, okay, I have to prove it. That's how I started my first company. And then since running a company and day-to-day operations and basically being the CEO means little time left for the social and political involvement. So at the moment, I'm no longer really actively involved in that space, which is, like you mentioned, Hanna Gabrielova, your previous guest, which is quite similar a journey as she did in Czechia, growing from the social movement into actually proving that you can make money on it in a environmentally conscious, ethical way.
Right. Thank you. I have to say it's really fascinating. However, I have to ask you a clarifying question because I'm rather, and I had this confusion with Cornelia as well from Betonica, the lady who is making the flower pots, that you are using cannabis, but are you referring to cannabis as the recreational drug? That's what you were working on to legalize, or was it industrial hemp?
Well, it is the same plant, right? I mean, the distinction between hemp and cannabis it's also the case that we use Polish in Poland. Is a different language. We have a single word for it, konopie. Yes. Konopie means cannabis, hemp. It's the same word. So obviously, like when you say a dog, you can both mean a small animal like that and the killer that weighs 100 kilos. It's still a dog. And with cannabis plants, it's the same. Hemp grown for fiber to make a yarn is hemp, it's konopie. And cannabis grew underground for flowers to smoke, to inhale. It's still cannabis, hemp.
Okay, konopie, but which one you were referring to? Because the one, I'm working on is only industrial hemp. So I'm not interested, in
at the beginning of my journey, it was basically the recreational drug. So high THC varieties, maybe that's a more clear way of defining them. High THC and low THC varieties, right? By law in Poland, we call it konopie włókniste, which means fibrous hemp.
Yes.
And it's defined as below 0.3 THC or above 0.3 THC. So even if you are growing for flowers, but it's below 0.3, it's the legal one, right? So obviously, at the moment, I'm growing only industrial hemp, only below 0.3% hemp. And for textile application, you don't even want flower.
Yes.
Flower is a stage at which a plant is devoting its energy to something other than fiber production. And the heavier the flower is, the stiffer the fiber gets. So we are growing varieties from Southern Europe, although we are in the northern part of Poland, which is like, comparing to North America, we're like in the middle of Canada, which is already a shorter day in autumn. So our varieties bloom very late, which means they don't have the chance to mature, which allows us to harvest the fiber when it is still a young plant, relatively, and the fiber is softer. So all that I've been referring to in the previous years about marijuana drug law reform, it was obviously high THC.
Yes.
Because when it comes to low THC plants, there is really no need to change any laws. It's basically legal in Poland to grow it. Although in 2014, when I was beginning, there was a like a catch-22 situation. So there was no way to legally start growing. You had to be included in a register of official hemp growers.
Yes.
But the register did not exist.
Okay.
So in order to have the license, you need to be in the register, but there is no register.
Right.
So it was a kind of difficult situation. But in 2014, I got the first license as a private person. The first Polish license was awarded to me. And then it actually opened up the market for both cannabinoids and fiber sheets and all the technical uses.
Right. Well, thank you for clarifying that, because here I'm in the UAE, the company in Dubai, and this is a Muslim country, obviously. And it was very important. And from the beginning, for me, it's very important to differentiate that I understand it's the same plant family, but it's different plants with, as you said, high THC and low THC content. And I'm putting a huge emphasis on it because it's very, very important that we are looking at the fibers and the different other applications. We are not looking at flowers. We are not looking at drug. So that's a different story.
The distinction is important, and it's often misunderstood, especially by people that know very little about it, including the American federal government and people at Google and Facebook, because I am not allowed to advertise a hat made of hemp, because by algorithms of Facebook, it's considered drugs.
Yes.
Like, it has zero to do with drugs, but still I'm not allowed to pay them for advertisement.
Yes, true. And, I absolutely agree with you. And many hemp business owners, including myself, are struggling with it, because it takes lots of effort and, and lots of the times it's even unsuccessful and they stop you from marketing it. But it's going to change, very soon. I do believe it. And more awareness is leading to more responsibility in a way. So that's something that we are going to see very soon, I believe.
It is happening. I've got the benefit of looking at it from the 20 years perspective. Yes. So it's not that bad anymore. It used to be worse. So it is getting better globally. Obviously, you have pockets of places in the world that locally it might be getting worse. You get some crazy situations like in Italy at the moment when one court is saying, okay, you can grow up to 1% THC and sell flowers, and the other court is saying you cannot grow even for food and fiber. So there are some ups and downs, but the general direction is definitely to a clearer situation. And on the textile side of things, I'm seeing major brands entering hemp and citing lack of sufficient supply as the reason why they are not doing more of it, rather than the connotations with high THC or whatever. So like brands like Levi's used to have 20-30% of hemp in their product like 3, 4, 5 years ago. Right now they reduced it a little bit because at the scale that Levi's is operating, they need tens of thousands of hectares being grown for fiber, processed on a regular basis, on a regular quality, on a regular orders, etc. So that's what's happening, and we're going to see explosive growth in this sector in the coming 5 to 10 years.
Right. I agree with you. And a lot of it has to do with the supply, and talking of supply, what you built up, the vertically integrated farm in Poland, it's really fascinating, and probably there are many countries, going to follow this, and the neighborhood as well, because where it gets stuck, as far as I understand right now, is the processing part, and building also the economy around it. So it becomes a circular economy. So that's a very good example that you have there in Poland. But because you mentioned you were not looking at yourself as an entrepreneur before, how did it come for you? Like, what are the milestones that you remember when you started the business? It's new, it's different, having textile and then mixing it with cotton. By the way, this is also hemp cotton, so, and I love it. I love all my hemp outfits. How did you learn the ropes? What were the key memories that you remember?
It's what is called as learning by doing. I'm basically a great believer in trial and error. So instead of just going through literature and trying to understand how things are being done, you just keep trying, and one of those attempts will succeed. That's my attitude. At the very beginning of my business path, it was being in the right place at the right time, because 2014, I decided to establish the company and do something with hemp without a clear business plan. I'm just, let's grow it, and then we're going to see how it turns out. And that was the point where Sanjay Gupta and CNN material about Charlotte Figi arrived. So people will start looking for CBD all around the world. They were not allowed to grow it in the US. They didn't want to import it from China because of the quality issues. So they were looking in Europe. And I just established a company in Europe claiming to be able to do everything. So within a very few months, we managed to build a company around CO2 extraction of flowers for CBD. So that was definitely a major milestone in my so-called career, which is obviously external. It was not my foresight to be at this place, although that's also a kind of a benefit of trial and error. If I didn't try to build this company, I wouldn't have succeeded. It's like if you don't try, you never succeed. And then 2018, I sold the cannabinoid business, and I had a non-compete clause. I was not allowed to do CBD, and I wanted to do hemp. So the choice to focus on fiber was not based on a grand analysis of the market, of where it's going, or my foresight. It was like, okay, I cannot do flowers. I'm not particularly good with grain, so let's just start with fiber. And just like that, we started growing for fiber, seeing how we can harness this energy, reading about it, meeting people, seeing how it's done in other places, in other industries, because we are also integrating experiences from other industries. Most of the equipment, most of the machinery that we were using for hemp fiber was not designed for hemp fiber. Then it was not even designed for fiber at all. Some of those machinery are from fruit business, meat processing, grain processing, and the machine doesn't know what it was designed for. If you tweak it a little, you can actually start processing fiber on it. And then step by step, we learned. Like a year ago, I had not a single meter of yarn. Like maybe a year ago, I just started spinning. Right now, we are already spinning different blends, different ratios, making woven textiles out of it. And like we see all this incremental development, which is actually self-sustaining, because then like with the woven textile, the usual way is you start from the end product. You imagine a hat like that, and then you think, all right, what kind of textile do I need for it? Then you establish the technical parameters for it, and then you go down. We are doing it the opposite way. We have a fiber, and let's see what we can do out of it. Then we realize, okay, this is this kind of woven fabric. What can I use it for? And then from this, we go for another step. So it's not the usual way of doing business. Usually people have it on paper first and then don't do all of it by themselves. They just build up a value chain, which is probably good for optimization of the processes, because if I'm doing all the processes, there is no way I'm super focused on each and every one of them. It's just not possible. If you're doing a dozen things, you have to divide your attention. So what I'm seeing, especially in the US, is companies focusing on one particular step. Let's say they are hemp farmers and they want to grow it and sell the crop. They don't want to be dealing with processing. So they can focus all their energy, all their capital, all their experience on the growing part. Then there's another company that is doing decortication only. They just take the straw, decorticate it, divide it to fiber and sheaves, and sell those to other companies. And I understand that this way you can actually be a specialist in one area, but it's actually leading to a gross misunderstanding of the whole value chain, because the person that is growing is so far away from the person that is actually doing the end product that if at the stage of the hat we have some concerns about quality and want to change something, I know every step of the way. I can go back to change the variety. I can harvest it later. I can change some parameters in sowing, or at the processing stage, I can run it twice through the machinery or tweak something on the machinery so that it gets this or that direction. And if you are specialized and operating in a value chain of a dozen different companies, you don't have that benefit. So that's the reason why I'm so focused on it. And also, it conveys a sort of message to the end consumer that you're actually buying a product with the story. You're buying a product from the person that knows this product, this thing, all the way up. It is a difference like between a large-scale brewer that is just making regular beer that is sold and marketed cheaply, or a small craft brewery of guys that are passionate about it. And okay, this beer might be a little bit more expensive, but it's done from better ingredients, and it's just different.
Yeah, thank you. It was a beautiful way of explaining, where we are going in the future, because currently it's a little bit, we are forced, to start thinking this way. And that's also good for us, because the more people start thinking locally and local solutions, it can still be a global innovation, but it starts locally with all those steps, and the trial and error that you mentioned. So I really learned a lot from you, and thank you so much for being here. I definitely appreciate, those insights and learning more about Kombinat Konopny. And wishing all the best for the company, and let it grow, and
Thank you. I'm always happy
famous.
to share and talk about hemp. So
thank you so much.
thank you.